And I was actually going to ask you another question in relation to the council and the voting. So what happens if the community doesn't want to vote for any of the projects that put themselves forward because they just seem like scams, for example, right? The majority are scammy, but most launch pads accept them anyway because they receive the money. Exactly. And they want the money at the end of the day. Yeah, so or they get a share of the token. So how are you going to manage that situation where over a set period of time, a lot of these scammy projects put themselves through? You're going to reject them. Well, not you, the council is going to reject them together with yourself. And then the community, let's say the community might want some of the community members might say, no, we're not going to see this. We're not going to have it. The council votes no in the end. And then after a set period of time, we continue to see this. How are you going to manage that situation? Because that's also going to be bad for Imbue in a way, because you're not seeing any onboarding, but at the same time, it's good because you're being transparent and you're saying no to the scams.
Yeah, so we have this problem is really interesting. At the moment, what we're doing is we're building a dedicated UI. The dedicated UI has a centralized database element to it to visualize the real projects are in this space. However, the chain itself, which is ultimately the source of truth, will have these scammy projects, right? But what we will have is functionality to remove the projects from the chain itself if the council and majority of the community agree these projects are scams. They shouldn't even have the option to be funded. They'll be removed, right? So it works the same way. Initially, it's going to be that centralized view so we can help curate, identify the projects that are real, and then visualize them. But at the same time, we can't enforce and say, no, only we decide which projects go in the chain, because then it's not decentralized, right?
No, it's true. No, we need the community and the council, but that's my point. Like, so how are you going to manage it if you don't see any projects? All the projects are getting refused. So if nothing is being built, then how are you going to, I don't know, to keep the Imbue network going? Because at the end of the day, so the community requires, not the community, the council requires funding as well, right? Or the devs require funding. So how are you going to?
Absolutely. So we've got the treasury, but two, the underlying issue needs to be identified, which is why can't we get any real projects getting funded, right? Because that's the underlying problem. And then that's where we work with projects identifying what problems are they trying to solve and what's the return of investment. Those are the main two things that identify a real project that adds value versus one that doesn't, right? So for example, very, very quickly, we can add a proposal from the DAO itself to say, this is really cool, but can we fund in this particular stable currency? Or can we bridge to Solana or Ethereum, right? So we can get funded in this particular currency, or we can reward. And then even the treasury itself can fund that idea, pending a vote from the holders, right? So we have so much functionality. What if we want to build a UI that identifies, right? You, Claudio, you've already delivered 1 or 2 successful projects. We want to highlight you as someone who has already a proven track record. That again is a proposal that gets funding. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your own project. It can be something that improves on the network, something to highlight. But then another thing is, what if you don't say proposal? What if you, Claudio, you're a big business, right? You're in the Web2 space, and you, again, though the same people who want to get into that space but don't have the expertise, what if you submit a brief and you're like, this is what I want to build. I want to build this particular thing, this particular product, but I don't have the expertise. And then you submit a brief onto the Imbue network, and then everyone around the world is decentralized. Everyone can submit proposals and say, you know what, Claudio, you're this big business brand. I can build it for you. And I want 100,000. And these are my milestones to deliver what you're asking for. Then you as a big business can safely accept proposals. And you're just another person in the network. You're funding them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So now I want to know the next thing. So tell me, how are you going to manage, for example, I know you've got a treasury, right? But how are you going to grow that treasury? How are you going to get the funding? I mean, are you as Imbue, will Imbue receive funding directly from these projects?
Yes.
So how will it work? Because if you're helping them on board, then how are you also fund? That's my question. It's a bit unclear.
Yeah. So every successful project that gets launched, the Imbue network takes 3 to 5% of the race were still unclear between 3 or 5, which one should it be, and that will be based on community feedback, which people feel is fair or not fair, and that goes directly into the treasury to continue funding, right? But then there are really interesting thoughts and ideas in our Telegram, an official Telegram, into how do we incentivize people to continue project, because you can't just incentivize it from the treasury. How do you work on getting incentives for the tokenomics itself to ensure people not only raise projects, but contribute? So instead of staking, right, and this is something that we've talked about within the community, instead of staking, what if we say we're not doing staking, but what we'll do is give you, double the traditional staking APY to fund projects, right? So now you're incentivized to fund project itself, and then the people who by doing that, you're driving more adoption into this space. Because you're like, I don't want to just hodl, I want to use my funds to build something. And then we can work with the proposals, the initiators, the people coming up with ideas to return some of that investment into the treasury. So it becomes like a circular feedback loop.